Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to a little chat with what is now one of my best friends, Zach Klein, WSB-TV in Atlanta. If you're in Atlanta, watch them on Channel 2. Hey, Zach, big game for both teams. Someone's going to be 0-2. What's your thoughts on the Falcons coming to Hollywood and SoFi Stadium this weekend?
Hey, Curt, it's great seeing you, my man. I'm just blessed to be in your world for a few minutes. It's been my day's made, so it's great seeing you as always. Listen, man, the Falcons got off to a tough start. I mean, they just puked on themselves in week 1 against the Saints at home, a 16-point lead going into the fourth quarter. Jameis Winston, Michael Thomas just lit up the secondary. Next thing you know, Arthur Smith afterwards blaming the media for writing them off in May, say you wrote our obituary in May. And wow. I don't really care about this. We move forward. And we're like, well, the reason well, some people, I didn't, but wrote your obituary back in May is because you guys haven't proven the ability to close football games. And you did it again. You blew a 16-point lead. So educate me on why we should think differently to proven otherwise. It's a tough situation. You guys, the Rams, have an extra 3 days of preparation. You're getting ready for a new quarterback. I know you guys are familiar with on the West Coast, but it's a tough start to the season. Losing at home to the Saints, and then with LA this weekend and the following weekend in Seattle.
Yeah, from my standpoint, watching Matt Ryan throw for the Colts was like watching Joe Montana throw for the Chiefs. That was so weird. No disrespect to Marcus Mariota, but what's kind of the feeling there with a completely different styled quarterback? And I sense in Atlanta that Ryan was like a second son to a lot of people.
Without question, Curt, he's done so much for this community. Obviously, what we saw on the football field, winning an MVP, leading his team to a Super Bowl, should have won that. It's another story for another day, as we know. But he was entrenched in this community. His first year in Atlanta was 2008. That was my first year in Atlanta working for Channel 2 here at WSB. So we kind of grew up in the city together. Again, gave so much of himself to that team, to that franchise, to the city. And last Sunday against the Saints, it was just the 4th time in 226 games that someone other than Matt Ryan started under center in a regular season and playoff game. So it was a really weird not to see number 2 in Atlanta, seeing number 2 wearing the Colts blue and white. Marcus is a totally different quarterback, gives Arthur Smith a little bit of a wrinkle, what he wants to do offensively, but definitely odd not seeing Matt in a Falcons uniform to start the season.
Well, I'll say historically, the Rams have struggled against running quarterbacks. There's no doubt about that. Now, having said that, their defensive coordinator is a guy that you're quite familiar with in Raheem Morris. And honestly, Raheem has been, in a couple of years that he's been here, and since we do the coaches show, he's talking to me during practice yesterday. I mean, he's just a personable guy. And I thought it was pretty fascinating and speaks to his character that when he was the interim coach after Dan Quinn got fired, a lot of guys might be a little bitter. And I know he was only 4-7 in those interim games, but man, he just loves the Falcons. He loves Atlanta. He speaks so highly. Is there a wrinkle in your eye there with Raheem coaching against the Falcons this week?
Hey, listen, he knows some of the personnel, but what Arthur Smith, the current Falcons head coach, and Terry Fontenot, the general manager, have done, Curt, is just flip this roster. So when Raheem was here over the last year and a half, the front office for the Falcons has a chance to evaluate 71 different players who have played at least one game. So 71 guys played at least one game. I think only 16 of those 71 guys remain on this Falcons roster. So a lot of the Raheem guys that he knew, fell in love with, they're just gone. They're just not here anymore. To your point, one of my favorite people on earth, loved this franchise. Players loved him. And you can see the guys on your squad now giving everything they can for Coach Morris, a future head coach in this league. And again, one of my favorite people on the planet.
Yeah, Zach Klein from WSB-TV in Atlanta. We're talking Rams. We're talking Falcons. We're talking football. Hey, did Cordell Patterson, did he walk on water this week? Because
man,
the way the Rams are talking about what it's going to take to stop him, I mean, really, I don't want to compare him to Debo, but my goodness.
He's a much bigger Debo. I mean, I wouldn't want to tackle this guy. Now, he's not, Derrick Henry. Maybe he's Derrick Henry light. I was looking at the stats from a year ago. Only one time, Curt, did he run for over 80 yards in a single game. He had 83 at halftime against the Saints, finished with a career high 120 rushing yards on a career high 22 carries. He is a load to tackle. He's so versatile coming out of the backfield, catching the ball. No one's going to want him bringing him down. I think it's a fantastic matchup. You get him on the wing. You get Marcus rolling out to the right or left. Definitely a new wrinkle in this Falcons offense. And what we saw was really more mind-boggling than Cordero running effectively was the way the offensive line protected Marcus in that week one against arguably one of the better front sevens in the National Football League. They really did a great job keeping him upright, doing a fantastic job to either give him some yardage on the ground game or open up some passing lanes. A huge improvement from what we saw a year ago when the Falcons were one of the worst teams in the NFL in protecting Matt Ryan, or now eventually this year, Marcus Mariota.
Interesting. One of the stories out here, Zach, is the fact that Matthew Stafford had a non-surgical procedure on his elbow of his throwing arm after the Super Bowl. So then in OTAs, he didn't throw one pass. He was out there, dropped back, never threw. And then they get to training camp and they limited. It was almost like a Clayton Kershaw coming back from surgery. They just limited his reps. And it was like covering the Kardashians. Every day, someone's asking a question about his elbow. But the bottom line is he didn't look sharp. He's still Matthew Stafford, but just his normal, in sync self. So everybody's wondering, is it the elbow or is it the lack of reps? And then you throw into the equation, you guys got some young DBs this week. What's your take on all that?
Obviously knowing Stafford the way we do, covered him at the University of Georgia, a huge favorite around these parts. I kind of think it was just, to me, a week one kind of crawl, walk, run into the season. Matthew Stafford's going to be fine. He's kind of like Brady. They can just run the offense with their eyes closed. We saw what happened a week ago with Jameis Winston, obviously not at the level of a Matthew Stafford or a Tom Brady by any means, but he didn't have Michael Thomas a year ago. He didn't play that much a year. So now those two, through the first three quarters, are trying to find their rhythm, find their sync. And then you get to the fourth quarter and those two couldn't be stopped. I mean, at one point, I think Jameis was 11 of 13 for over 200 yards and 2 touchdowns. And you mentioned the corners that the Falcons have. I was talking to a few folks in the Falcons front office at what worked well in game one and what kind of was like, man, we got to clean that up. And they say what worked well in their eyes was the surprise, protecting the quarterback and getting to the quarterback. We can talk more about the Falcons defense in a minute, but what concerned them was the secondary and the depth in the secondary. I mean, a year ago, AJ Terrell, according to Pro Football Focus, was one of the best cover corners in the National Football League. But week one against me, he got torched week one, gave up all those touchdowns to Michael Thomas, and he just had a bad game. So is that something we should worry about? Will Stafford focus on that? He's going to go against Cup, right? Best on best. And week one, best on best, went to New Orleans. You can definitely see McVay and company trying to exploit that matchup to see if we're going to see AJ Terrell 2021 or we saw game one of 2022.
Well, you talk about McVay. He played his high school football there in Atlanta. And I know you are a little bit more familiar with him than most. And the folks that are watching this, his dad, Tim, was the general manager at your station. I mean, what an inner circle connection.
It's fantastic. The McVays have so much love around our parts. And I think if you were to ask anyone in Atlanta, Metro Atlanta, their favorite NFL team, they would say the Falcons, and then wherever McVay is coaching, right? Definitely everybody in Atlanta felt they won a Super Bowl a year ago when you guys took home the crown. But yeah, this is the studio that McVay built. I mean, this is Channel 2 here in Atlanta.
Wow.
Tim McVay, Sean's dad, was our general manager. I got to know Sean over the years. And funny, if you got time for a quick story, my favorite Sean McVay story was, I think it was 2016, the final year of the Georgia Dome. Falcons, Green Bay Packers, NFC Championship game. The city is electric. We feel we're going to go to the Super Bowl. And of course, Channel 2 had a suite. So Tim is taking all the high roller sponsors into this suite for this championship game. So he's like, Zach, I need a favor. Can you help me get Sean down? But Sean right now is with the Washington Redskins, some lowly assistant for them. I think he was coaching tight ends at the time. So just you and me here talking, you and me, off the record, snuck Sean McVay, took my security guys at the Georgia Dome, snuck him into the dome, got him up to the suite so he could watch the Falcons just roll against Aaron Rodgers and the Green Bay Packers. Goodness. They go to the Super Bowl, and then here we are in the media center. I'm doing like a Facebook Live for 30 minutes with Sean McVay. No one outside of Washington knows who this young kid is. And then you fast forward to where we are right now. He can't go anywhere in Hollywood or LA without autograph seekers and TMZ probably trying to take a picture of him. So it's just amazing to see who he was back then and who he is now in terms of the public perception. To us, he's still Sean McVay, still a guy you can talk some smack with and have some fun.
Boy, what a great story. And the common thread is, as much as his life has changed, he's still the same. He's still grounded. Hence his dad. He speaks so highly of both his mom and dad. It's interesting that you brought up Matthew Stafford going to Georgia. They were out here for that great game against Oklahoma a few years ago in the Rose Bowl. I think, quite frankly, they're going to be out here at SoFi for the national championship too, the way they're playing. Give our viewers a little bit of the taste of the landscape out there. Out here in Los Angeles, quite frankly, it's a Dodger Laker town. And the Rams have certainly chipped right back into that, not just with the return, but the obvious success last year. What's it like when you're covering sports? What is Georgia Bulldog football compared to Atlanta Falcon football?
It's everything. I mean, it was a good run in our parts. Sorry, LA folk, when we had the Braves beat the Dodgers and win the World Series, and the Bulldogs, because you guys don't have college. You don't have college football on the West Coast, do you guys? You have to move to the Midwest.
USC's back.
Okay. I'm an AP top 25 voter. Well, maybe one day those guys on the West Coast will crack my poll. It ain't happening anytime soon. But as for your question about the Georgia Bulldogs, we get yelled at on who we lead with in our sportscast. So everybody thinks we have a bias. We're just trying to serve our audience, right? If I lead with Georgia football 365 days a year, Curt, it's probably a good year. They sell out 90,000 for a spring G-Day game. It's a practice, and they sell it out with 90,000 strong, the week after the Masters here in Georgia. A huge deal. And Kirby gives them reasons to have hope when you have recruiting class after recruiting class ranked in the top 3. You show up at the Rose Bowl. You lose in a heartbreaker to Alabama that year in the national championship. But what you do is you're never complacent. You're moving forward. And we saw them last year get that chance against Alabama in the national championship game. And this year, number 1 for a reason. I've been on the field for every game. These guys are just grown men. It's just different when you see SEC football, what Georgia's doing. I know you guys don't want to hear it out there. You guys are Hollywood and cool. Everybody's athletic. But I think what it's won, just like it is my man in the NFL, it's won in the trenches. And what Georgia does well under Kirby is he has depth at those positions. So when you get in the third and the fourth quarter, that steamroll, you're just running guys over. It's pretty impressive what he's built in Athens.
Yeah, and to echo what you're saying, I mean, when Pete Carroll was here, USC football was on the map, obviously, for a number of years. And then they haven't been the same since he left. And when Lincoln Riley came in from Oklahoma, that was, to echo what you just said, that's what he said. He's like, listen, we got to get better in the trenches. So we'll see. I will tell you, you need to have USC on your vote right around 7, maybe 6. They're loaded. Now it's really Oklahoma West, but hey, they're wearing USC uniforms this year.
And I am just messing with you. I do have them in my top 10. So I do have some Trojan love. I don't be hitting me up on Twitter saying I know nothing about college football.
I was reading your sarcasm.
Yes, yeah, he's got. Listen, they got some great talent. Obviously, again, if they're a stock, I'm buying what he's doing out there. A great coach, and listen, the recruiting, the base is there. I mean, there's so many guys that he can just lock up those borders. I think he's gonna do a fantastic job.
Well, last thing before I let you go is the Rams are the defending Super Bowl champs. Atlanta's the defending World Series champs. The Dodgers now have Freddie Freeman, who, oh my gosh, is that the greatest? And I don't mean player. Yeah, he was National League Player of the Week last week for the 3rd time. He is the greatest person on planet Earth. Do you think these two teams are going to see each other in the playoffs? Will Atlanta get hot again and just steamroll? What's your thoughts? I mean, that could be just a classic series in the playoffs.
Yeah, listen, I was there. I think you were a couple years ago when the two teams hooked up in Houston, right, during that COVID year. I thought the Braves should have won it. The NLCS then puked on themselves, but learned from that mistake, obviously winning it a year ago. And I think you and I will be seeing a lot of each other, fortunately, my friend, over the next month and a half in the fall. And then obviously we get into January for the national championship game. I see no reason why it's not Dodgers, Braves to represent the National League, and then Georgia playing for another national championship. You guys are loaded and loaded for a reason. You guys are playing consistently throughout the year. The Braves have peaked and valleyed a lot. They get really hot, then a little bit of cold, and they're hot again. I do think when the day is done that they win the NL East over the Mets, who I think will collapse down the stretch. So once again, a 5th straight National League East championship. And I think it'll be fun to see these two teams play for the NL title.
Well, that's kind of cute, that little 5th straight. The Dodgers have won 9 of 10. So that's cute.
9 of 10. Not as good as what the Braves have, 14 in a row back in the day?
And, back in the day, I love baseball. And it's funny. I kind of feel like the Dodgers are the Tom Glavine, Tom Maddox, John Schmaltz, because they win the division, but they have one World Series title
Yep.
in that time, and it was that COVID year. So we'll see. All right, we're going to end with where we started, football. I'm not a big prediction guy, but I'm going to ask you your prediction for Sunday at SoFi Stadium. Give me a score. How's this thing going to flow?
I think it's not close, to be honest with you. I think
Really?
giving your staff and McVay an extra 3 days to prepare for a Falcons team that still has a lot to prove. Again, a lot of young pieces on this team. They'll be better in a year, 2, 3, but not in 2022.